The FARC rebel group is ready to become a legal political movement in Colombia. This was announced by their chief negotiator in the peace talks taking place in Havana. Now,
we are ready to address and discuss the procedures to move from being an armed organization to becoming a political movement.
Marquez also explained that an agreement is about to be reached on the critical judicial component of the integral system of truth, justice, reparation, and non-repetition. He added that the guerrilla group has submitted a package of basic proposals to the Colombian government. This has welcomed the FARC's willingness to put down their arms and become legal. A partial agreement on land reforms has already been achieved during the talks. The FARC speaker also called for a bilateral ceasefire.
We continue to try to build consensus on a ceasefire and an end to the hostilities, both bilateral and definitive, and we are making progress in the analysis of how to surrender the arms.
And for more on this, our correspondent in Colombia, Natalia Margarita, is on the line. Natalia, hi, good to see you. What have been the reactions in relation to this announcement thus far?
Hi there, Regan. Well, the reactions have been, in general, very, very positive following this announcement by the FARC that they are ready to lay down weapons and to start moving forward towards a political movement. This has triggered like the very best reactions here. Political analysts, but also Congress people have been saying that this shows that the peace process is moving forward and that we Colombians are one step closer to this peace construction that all people here in this country have been waiting for decades, Regan.
Now, the FARC is also saying that they're seeking a consensus for a bilateral ceasefire. We know there have been unilateral ceasefires over the past year. Do you think the Colombian government is open to that?
Well, we can definitely say that the Colombian government is committed to a de-escalation of the armed confrontations, especially after the FARC implemented this latest unilateral ceasefire since the 20th of July. Exactly what the government said back then on the 20th of July in the wake of this FARC unilateral ceasefire is that they are ready to discuss the conditions and like the technical details of how this bilateral ceasefire will work in the ground. It is important to remember that there is a subcommission for what is called the end of the conflict there in Havana. And right in this subcommission for the end of the conflict, both parties involved are discussing issues like the mechanisms for monitoring and for the mechanism for verification of an eventual bilateral ceasefire. But what is true is that following this unilateral ceasefire since the 20th of July and also the suspension of airstrikes by the government, we have been experiencing here in Colombia a de-escalation of the conflict that will eventually lead to a bilateral and definitive cessation of hostilities. And I insist that is right what the subcommission for the end of the conflict is discussing there in Havana, Regan.
Now, as we just reported, the FARC said that they're becoming a political organization, moving from being an armed organization. How is this process going to work?
Well, we still need to know the detail. All what we know following the statement of the FARC yesterday is that they have submitted to the delegation of the government there in Havana, the peace delegation of the government, a proposal with the details of how this transition would be. We don't know these details. We're still waiting for the release of those details and that proposal. But something that is very interesting, Regan, is people here, analysts, social movements, social leaders have welcomed this announced by the FARC. But what they have been asking, the question they have been raising is whether the government is really prepared for this transition. because we need to remember that there has been lack of political guarantees for social movements and social leaders, especially lately here in Colombia. And in terms of this, I want to recall two specific examples that we had here in Colombian history in the past, and is one movement called the M19, who laid down weapons back in 1990. And just to give you an example, after this happened, this same year, the leader was assassinated by paramilitary groups. We also have the case of the Patriotic Union political party, who has been facing criminalization, assassinations after they laid down weapons back in 1985. So social movements here have been calling, in the wake of the latest statement on the FARC, have been calling the government to commit to the political guarantees that a group like the FARC will definitely need, these guarantees of political participation to become a political movement. In general, social activists and social movements here don't want the story of Patriotic Union or other movements that have laid down weapons to happen again, meaning to have their leaders, after laying down weapons, being assassinated by paramilitaries and state forces here. So this should be very clear, the issue of how the government is going to deal with the political guarantees once the FARC eventually lay down weapons, Regan.
Well, we've been following this for a while and we'll continue to do so. Obviously, a bilateral ceasefire, laying down of weapons will be best, paramount for the safety of the Colombian people. Thank you so much, Natalia, again for your amazing work. We'll touch base another time.
Good day, Regan.